Kevin Rudd, pretty strong words there. Policy frauds. He's suggesting there is a bit of a backflip here when it comes to the NBN.
Well, I mean, Kevin Rudd is desperate to be relevant and, of course, has been out talking about the NBN and superannuation in the last couple of weeks. And, you know, he's obviously looking for some things to do. Maybe he's going to have another crack at Parliament.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in this point because, I mean, the government has spent some $51 billion on the NBN, right? So it looks as though if people want to get this faster NBN, that they're going to have to stump up extra cash. So in many instances, their bills are going to double. So is it a bit rich for the government to allow that to happen, to ask people to essentially pay double when the government spent so much money on it, when the speeds have been so low, and to get the faster speeds now is something that we should have had years ago?
I mean, the NBN was put together on the back of an envelope, I think, on a VIP plane somewhere in Queensland, and that has sort of dogged its evolution over the last decade. It's a bit like the super system. It's a system without a clear objective. And over the last few years, we have tried to move to a technology agnostic approach and much more of a demand-driven approach, which I think is appropriate, because not everyone wants to pay for the same plan, and now effectively that is the policy we have in place, that people can pick and choose what they are looking to have.
OK, well, you brought up the super funds there. There's a bit of a war of words going on here. They've accused you of being like an anti-vaxxer, obsessed with dismantling the industry, calling your claims puerile. What do you say to your accusers?
Well, I mean, Mr Combe, who's now running the super funds, has been out spending $40 million of people's retirement savings, putting himself on TV. So this is a shocking vanity project from Mr Combe. He'd be better off spending his time trying to cut the fees of the super funds rather than trying to advertise his own mug on TV.
Does name-calling get anyone anywhere, though?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the main issues that I've outlined in the book that I wrote, Bad Egg, the super funds don't want to engage in. They just want to engage in name-calling. So, I mean, I'd be very happy to sit down with them and to go over how the system could work, because I'm a believer in the idea of super, and I think that we should fix it for Australia's future.
And in that context, do you think it should just stay where it is, the rate?
Well, the 9 to 12 issue is frankly a small part of the bigger game here. I mean, Australians are spending $32 billion a year on fees, which is more than we spend on power bills. We should have a plan to cut the fees in half. And we also want to make sure that home ownership doesn't slip away from a whole generation of Australians, and super can play a constructive role there. So there are a lot of issues that the super funds, I think, could come to the table on and have a sensible conversation with the government about. But they want to call people anti-vaxxers because they're raising questions about the system in the middle of a pandemic. So I think it is pretty childish and pretty unedifying behaviour.
What's the context behind calling you an anti-vaxxer? Are you an anti-vaxxer?
Well, I'm not an anti... No, I'm not. You know that.
Yeah.
I'm vaccinated. My family's vaccinated. But it's bizarre, isn't it? I mean, I would have thought that it's an opportunity for them to try and ensure that the system is going to be there for the future by responding to policymakers that are raising questions about the current performance of the scheme.
Is that what you're going to say today at the Association of Super Funds of Australia?
Yes. I mean, I'm doing the speech because I want to engage on the issues. I'm not a wrecker. I'm a fixer, as it were. So that's what I'm looking to have a conversation with the super funds about later this afternoon.
Are you a fixer in the mould of Christopher Pyne?
I knew you were going to ask that. Look, I'm very focused on policy fixes, and I think super is a very important one to fix.
Have you got any plans to go to the Barossa?
No, not at this stage. I'm more focused on trying to support my own state.
But you would be happy with the borders opening up between the South Australia and New South Wales?
I'm very happy about that, and I think it's a very sound decision by Stephen Marshall. I mean, I think that all the state borders should be open apart from Victoria's. There's just it's economic lunacy, to be honest here, Pete, and we need to learn to live with this virus. The economic damage which has been inflicted onto the tourism sector in particular is just it's unbearable, actually.
But when they say, though, when the Premier says that the deal's off if there is just one case of community transmission, I mean, what do you make of that?
It's ridiculous. I mean, we need to move to a local government area zone or a hotspot, a definition, which closes off small parts of cities or small parts of states for interstate travel, not close off a whole state. I mean, our states are huge. There's six states in Australia. There's not 50 like the US. So a state closing its borders is a really big deal geographically.
All right. Senator Andrew Bragg, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us this morning.